This is the Striped Life Officials Podcast with Jeff Landers.
Hello and welcome into the Striped Life Officials Podcast. This is episode number 1, numero uno, going out to YouTube. I am Jeff Landers. I'll be your host on this podcast, and I really want to jump right into it. We've got a great way to start the entire show. We're going to be talking about conflict resolution, and I have the perfect person to bring on here. He's a part of our association here where I am in our area. He's a longtime official. His name is Blair Piippo, and anybody who knows Blair loves Blair and working with Blair because he is just that good of a guy to work with. He's been in the field for 30 years. He's worked a handful of Division I basketball games. He's been in the Scenic West Athletic Conference for 22 years and was in the Frontier for 15. Has worked a handful of Pioneer League baseball games, seasons, I should say, and got into it because of his dad. His dad refereed for a long time. And Blair, welcome in. And can I do you any more justice? What else would you like to say as we get going here?
How you doing? Oh man,
good. How are you doing?
Quite the ride.
Good. So your expertise is on conflict resolution, and as referees, we are smack dab in the middle of conflict between two teams. So tell us a little bit more about that and how you came about to study that.
Oh man, it's been such a ever since day one, if you will. It's been how do you diffuse that? How do you keep your credibility yet be able to be able to work with a coach? And I wish that there was a crystal ball, the little number A ball, and you shake it, and if I say this, everything is going to be just fine. But it's not. Coaches are different. Every official is different. Every partner is different. Every situation is different. Is it a loser out to go to state, or is it just the first game of the season? Every one of them's different, and it's always intrigued me of why people react the way they do. And there's been a lot of things in the news as of late about coaches and parents just not acting in a way that I think is suitable for sports. And so it's always intrigued me. I've read books on it. As you and I talked, I did my master's thesis on conflict resolution, and it's ever changing though. I don't think I'll ever truly be able to say that is exactly what you need to do.
It's human psychology, really, and knowing who you're up against. And for me, if you've listened to audio episode number 1 already, you know that I'm only 4 years into basketball and just 1 year into football. And I've missed some great opportunities to get that dig in. And you always think back like, oh, I really should have said that. And
I should have said that.
Because I have a little bit of a dark humor to me. I'll give you an example. I was doing a freshman game. I was the line judge on a freshman football game. And I don't know if it was just an assistant coach who was really way down the totem pole or a dad who was just on the sideline. But I had ended up on a long play. I ran into the freshman head coach who was in the box. And I should have flagged him and given him 15. It's in the rules, automatic 15. But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to sideline warning. That's fine. Coach, here, stay out of the box. I gave him the sideline warning, and assistant coach goes, "You need a hug." It's like I should have just thrown the flag and turned around and been like, "Joke's on you because I'm into that. So give me a hug or get 15 yards." Like, so it's that is our plot in life. I think as officials, we always have the perfect thing to say 2 hours after the game, after you've had time to process it. So getting into the moment, how do you get into that moment for yourself? Is it a process of knowing what coaches you are working with, or what is it for you?
Yeah, in part it is. If you think about it, the freshman coach, you're going to respond to that. And let's say if Coach K looks at you and go, "Come here,"
Yeah.
You're going to treat those things differently. They really are. And I think that is definitely a part of it. You know who your coaches are. You know that maybe they are just very, very high strung, just that type A in your face all the time, because you can see it when they interact with their players. Then you have the other coaches that are just kind of melancholy, sit back, let things happen, and the only time you hear from them is when they eventually blow up, and you do interact with them differently. One of my favorite coaches, he used to be at CSI. He never said a word until he thought, and then he'd come to me, and it was very short and quick. He goes, Blair, they're doing this, they're doing that, whatever, ABC. And we had a great relationship because I knew that he'd just let me work. But if he says it, I'm going to listen to him.
Yep.
And I love that relationship. But you don't have that all the time. Sometimes it's a brand new coach. You don't know who they are, how to interact, and so with that, to your point earlier on your keep a journal. Keep a journal of situations. Oh, I should have said that. Now that really gets in your head where you can put that in your bag to use. The other side of it is you got to know who you are. In my years, I try to be people that I'm not. There was one guy that love him to death. He was as an official, he's very aggressive. And I thought, okay, well, I see he's doing state tournaments all the time. That's what I'm going to do. And in that year, I probably had more technical fouls than I have all the other years because it's not me. On the other side of it, there are those that are just really, again, melancholy, nice and easy. Again, that's not me. I don't think I tried to use humor. Sometimes it works, but when it didn't work, it completely backfired. So I thought, okay, I can't do that. And what really worked for me ultimately is sincerity. For example, if a coach yells at me, I can turn to them and say, "Do you know what, coach? I don't like that." And the vast majority of the time they go, "Oh, geez, Blair, I'm sorry. I got a little aggravated there." And then we're able to have a discussion. So yeah, definitely know who your coaches are. Definitely know who you are, and keep a journal. Even now, I could go into my bag. It's a little black book about yay big. In baseball, football, I keep it in my back pocket. When I have a chance, I write it down. Oh, here's the situation. I should have done this, should have done that. And then I think about it. And the more and more you experience it, the better you'll be. I guess the other aspect of it is when those situations happen, don't panic. Our minds start going 1,000 miles an hour. The coach starts yelling. Now all of a sudden we have these preconceived, I know the coach is yelling about this. No, go and listen to him. Keep your mouth shut for a minute. Listen, because a lot of times they're going to they'll let you know exactly what it is, and they'll also give you the answer that you're going to give to them. They're A, B, and C. They're doing this, and this is what I think it is. Coach, valid point. And that's okay.
Now,
Hey, Blair, is this what they're doing on? That's why you're calling a foul? Yep, that's exactly why I'm doing it.
Yep.
And,
now, to your first point,
yeah.
just with your first point, how much a coach with you said CSI, that's College of Southern Idaho, for those that might be watching out of state. That is a supply and demand issue. For me, I studied a little bit of economics in college, and I see a lot of supply and demand around life in general. And so the psychology of that coach doesn't say very much, so he's going to demand your ear when he does, versus the coach who's 100% of the time. We have them. I could drop some names right now and you would laugh at me because we've had those problems with the same people. And those coaches who just run your ear off, I'm ignoring them 99% of the time. So it is definitely a give and take. I love to keep a journal idea, especially for somebody who has a writing background. But for somebody who has a writing background, I really don't like reading. I really don't. But I'm going to give you our summer reading list. Some of these are books from Blair and some from my own selection. Excuse me. So our summer reading list here at Striped Life Officials. Number one, how to win friends and influence people. I think that's exactly what we're trying to talk about here today. That's by Dale Carnegie. And Don't Bullshit Yourself by John Taffers. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Those are Blair's 3. And I didn't get one in because it stuck at the bottom of the email and was on the 3rd page of the email. And the 4th book Blair had given us was The Leading Brain by Fabrit. You might have to pronounce Fabritius.
I think
maybe
they're Swedish. So I don't know.
And then Verbal Judo by George J. Thompson, and Boundaries: When to Say Yes, When to Say No by Dr. Henry Cloud. And that one's one of my favorite ones because we literally have boundaries on the field that coaches are not supposed to cross. But a lot of the times we have to go to the verbal coach. You're out of your box, get back on the sideline, go back to your bench. So, Blair, of those books, which one was your favorite toward conflict resolution?
Oh man, you know what? All of them to some degree. The Dale Carnegie one, How to Win Friends and Influence People. That one was really good because he had situations that he explained that when somebody came after him, he would just let them vent, and he was okay. And then a lot of times he would thank them. And to me, that is fantastic when you have that much self-control that you can do that. The other part of it is the one, hey, don't bullshit yourself. The reality is this: a lot of time in conflicts, it is our fault. Mm-hmm. It is. We said the wrong thing. We were too aggressive. We went at them as I'm the god of basketball, and I'm going to tell you how it is, and that never goes over well. I think we as officials are really really good at kind of pointing the finger sometimes, but I think we need to point it back at us sometimes, saying I should have done this, I should have done that, and I should not have done that. And I had that situation where there was a local coach here, and he and I went nose to nose. And afterwards, I thought about it, and in part, I was wrong. I could have diffused the situation. Well, he and I didn't see each other for the next year. And then I actually saw him over the summer, and I went, you know what? This is ridiculous. We got to get this fixed. So he and I sat down in the stands, and we talked for about 45 minutes, and we worked it out. One of the best coaches I know, and not saying that we didn't have conflict after that, but now there was this mutual respect where we could work through things. There was one of the camps that I went to, Dave Hall. I think everybody knows who Dave Hall is, and he said that you need to be able to do 3 things at any given time. If you are wrong, you know what? Say you're wrong. Say you missed it. You will actually gain more credibility by doing that than saying that, I got it right. Because the first thing they're going to do after that game, they're going to call that film up, go right to that play. And if you're wrong, now you lost credibility. The other one is you need to be able to say, do you know what, coach? I don't know. That's okay. There is nothing wrong with saying, I don't know. Do you know, coach, that's a play that I just don't know. That happened really quick. What do you think, coach? Let him talk, and he may be right, but that's okay. And then on the other hand, when you're right, you need to be able to stand up for yourself and say, you know what? No, coach, I got that one right. And you want to be able to do any of those 3 at any given time. Let's see, whatever, the verbal judo.
Yes, I have that right here. I have a quote from here. George J. Thompson, Verbal Judo: People aren't buying what you say. They're concentrating on how you're saying it. And I think you touched on that already because as someone who came out of the television industry, I had to be very careful of what I said at all times. It almost got to the point where I didn't want to say anything without a teleprompter having had it pre-written for me. Because PR and imaging are so important. And that's what Thompson puts here is people are looking at you and not listening to what you're saying. They're listening to how you're saying it. And I think going back to Dale Carnegie here, every man I meet is my superior in some way in that I learn of him. Every coach has experiences that we don't have as referees, and especially with the way coaches view the game. Now, we view the game very, very differently than coaches a lot of times, but we can learn from the coaches about, hey, how do coaches want a game called versus how we're being taught. Now, it could be two different things, or they could be similar, and we could, find some common ground there.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And there's a really interesting thing, and I don't remember what coach it was that told me this. He said, you officials need to keep in mind when the game's done, you're done. He says, but after the game, if we have a bad loss, he says, now I have to go and work my players through that emotionally. There's tears, there's frustration. And I had to think back to my high school days, and I'm like, yeah, I completely forgot about that it's not just that game. It's the stuff before it, the stuff after it. And that really put a different spin on why coaches work so hard for their players. And that really changed my perspective quite a bit.
It did. And I had one of our football guys here who works in the Big Sky conference for football. He said that when they go to meet coaches, coaches will tell them, yeah, if you make a mistake on a call, you get to go home at the end of the night. If you make a mistake on a call, I have to put the for sale sign in my yard as a college football coach, because that's their livelihood. They don't have the phys ed job to fall back on that, some of your JV and freshman coaches do. And I'm not ragging on phys ed. It's just a different dynamic for college coaches when that is their full-time job.
Yep. It's funny you mentioned that in the Pioneer League, the baseball league last year, there was a player that I called him out on a steal to second base, and he was a shortstop, and he came back out when they were on defense, and we had a pretty good relationship. He goes, I've got to start doing that better. He says, if I don't, I'm going to get fired. And I thought, wow. So yeah, everything we do does have an effect. And I think, to your point, we need to be better at that. We need to take more upon ourselves as officials to get better, to watch film, admit when we're wrong, try to, keep trying to get better, and then try to get better as a crew. Part of this conflict resolution, there's conflict between referees sometimes.
Oh yeah.
And that's something that we don't address. How do you deal with another official that maybe you are the better official and they're making a mistake or anything like that? That's part of the conflict, that if we don't deal with that, Jeff, you and I are working a game and you and I are fighting it out amongst ourselves, we're affecting that game.
Well, and then both teams, if that were to happen, both teams are going to see it and then divide and conquer. All right, there's a crack in the crew. They're fighting among themselves. How do we take advantage of that? We can divide them and conquer them, and then that's going to create even more chaos, just because. And to answer that first question, how do you deal with it? I go to Arbiter and block.
And you know what? And that's actually a good point. If you really, butt heads, don't get along with another official, it really doesn't do you or that other official or the teams any good to continue to work with them. And it does happen. I mean, you fight your own spouse, and yet you're married to them. Officials, yeah, you're going to have those conflicts.
Absolutely. Now I'm trying to think back through the many conflicts I had. I had every level of basketball this past winter. I did 95 basketball games in our district, junior high girls all the way up through varsity boys. And the worst one I had was a rivalry contest between junior high boys schools, small schools in our area, and 5 total technical fouls, all on the coaches, all on the same team, on the visiting team. And these 2 schools were in the same town. These 2 junior high schools, 7th and 8th grade boys, were playing at the same time as their varsity teams were going to play in the district tournament in the same town. So we had a crowd for a 4:30, 7th grade game. We had a bigger crowd for the 6 p.m. 8th grade game that we're all going to go over to the varsity game. And this crowd about boiled over. And 5 technical fouls. And I ejected one of the head coaches, the 7th grade coach. And I think back to myself, how could I have handled that? Because my partner had tagged this guy for saying that's weak to one of his foul calls. Well, that's an automatic technical. That's boom, number 1. Well, late in the game, while the score is still within reach for his team, I had to tag one of his kids twice for the same foul on post play on a free throw. His kid is in the first spot underneath, and he just takes his arm and just throws the kid, and the kid goes to the ground. I tag it twice, and he's up out of his box challenging me, saying, I want to talk to you about that. Okay, so I went over there, and I was explaining to him, but he was already heated. There was no getting through to him at this point. So he finishes with, that's weak. Well, we're going to stay consistent because number 1 complaint about referees is consistency. So I tagged him for it because he already had one. I didn't want to have to throw him out of the game. Well, here you go. If I had, instead of going over to explain to him and met him face to face, okay, walk with me, coach. Just walk me to your bench. I'll explain it to you. And then I'll explain it to you as long as I'm walking to your bench. As soon as I get to your bench, I'm done explaining. You stay there. I'm going back to the game. It was as simple as that, and I wouldn't have had to eject him. So that's what you're talking about, looking in the mirror and self-analyzing. You guys got to be able to do that to say, how can I have been better? Because I've had situations too where I've tagged kids for technical fouls, and all I could have done was, he was standing right next to the bench. I'd been like, Coach, get him out of the game before I whack him. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I did that over Memorial Day weekend, and it worked perfectly.
And it does. And those are all the little tips and tricks. I don't want to say tricks, but little things that we can do to alleviate that conflict within the game. Even our body position. I don't talk to a coach face to face. For guys, especially athletes, that's very confrontational. If I'm going to visit with them in a heated discussion, it's going to be side to side. So we can talk. I don't gesture very much. If I do gesture, I know it's simple, palms up. That's inviting. Yeah, I want to work with you through that. To your one point though, sometimes, go ahead.
I'm just imitating here for you. Palms up because because I can do the Ricky Bobby. I don't know what to do with my hands, but Coach, what'd you have? Coach, what'd you have? It's instead of stop, Coach. Like you said, it's very inviting.
Yeah, absolutely, and those are things that help out. But you can also, do you know what, Coach? Hey, I am 2 feet from you. Okay, you don't have to yell. I am right here. Don't forget, I came to you. What do you want to talk about? Mm-hmm. Give them the last word. Nothing wrong with that. Well, Blair, I think you should do better. Okay. Off you go.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead.
Now, I was just going to ask you if you had felt, because football, to me, football is as close as you can get to war without actually killing people because of the physicality. Guys really are trying to, quote unquote, take their heads off in a figurative manner. But do you find yourself with more conflict resolution in a football game as a white hat? I've worked with you on a game, or have you had, kind of the nature of basketball puts you so much closer to the action and the coaches when you're running past them?
Wow, and that's a really good question. As the levels change and the game in and of itself, yes, there are the aggressive nature of football does lend itself to more conflict. And as our assigner says, anytime there's a tackle, we need to be in there. Let them know that, hey, we are right here. We are watching. Very, very active dead ball officiating, making sure that people know that we're there and we're paying attention. We never take we don't take a timeout. We don't have a dead ball
Yep.
situation where we're watching. The beauty of football, the rules are complicated. So if we use true football verbiage, we can usually deal with it because a lot of the times they're confused. People think they understand basketball, and again, like you said, they are right on top of you, and that lends it to more verbal conflict, if you will. And then the conflicts at at the collegiate level, at the minor league levels, the attention to detail is what helps us and also hurts us. They expect perfection. If I'm behind the plate in a Pioneer League game and that ball barely clips the edge of that plate and I call it a strike, they'll turn to me and go, "Hey, is that your outside?" Okay, and once I say yes, those guys are good enough that they can read it. And so yeah, they're different in different ways. You can't referee a college game the same way you do a junior high game.
Oh,
It's
no.
impossible.
Nope. Impossible. And that's the thing, too. I was talking to our basketball commissioner, who was kind enough to come down and ref with me after he lost a bet on the Patriots-Bills playoff game. I told him that was me trying to break through the varsity. Is, hey, I've got this bet on the Patriots-Bills playoff game. He's a Patriots fan with the asterisk, because they cheat.
Oh, no.
I told him, if I lose the bet, I'll do any game for you that's more than 90 minutes away, because we have trouble staffing those games.
Yes, we do.
And then if the Patriots lost, he had to put me on a large school game with him. And sure enough, he lived up to his bet. So thank you, James. But I was telling him, I'm like, I've had every level. I've had junior high girls up through varsity boys this season. Every time I step on the court, I'm just trying to find what is a foul in this game, in this contest. What is a foul? Because we have guys who are more strict than others, who are book guys who want a very clean game. There are guys like me who are going to let contact in the post go until it's a double foul. And, that's probably that's the level of finding the foul. I'm like, yeah, I probably should have banged that one a little bit earlier than I did. But we have to be able to find that sweet spot. And here's where I'm driving this point home. It's from the leading brain, and I'm going to try it again. Friedrich Fabritius. I don't know if I got that one right. But our pursuit of peak performance is a little like Goldilocks' tasting of the Three Bears porridge. Our goal is to find a level that is neither too cold nor too hot, but just right. And I think that's every time we step on the football field, every time we step on the basketball court, or you behind the plate or at first base or third base, or wherever you are on the baseball field, find that level of this game. We're going to allow it to play and not boil over.
Yep. And that can be very difficult. If you have the number one team in the state and the worst team in the state, we can go in there and think, oh my word, that is, it's going to be a complete blowout. And I'm just going to referee it to get out of here. Let's be honest with ourselves. There are some games where we're like, I'm just going to do it, get out of here, and go grab a bite to eat. And I find when I have done that in the past, it always bites me. Because now I'm not putting my heart, my soul into this, the things that I know I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not paying attention to the players on the court. I'm looking off in the stands, seeing who's up there. And, I had a game this last year, and I want to say it was a number 3 in the state and about the number 20th in the state. 20th beats them. I mean, just manhandles them. And that brought to the point to me, you know what? Referee the game like it is. Whatever it presents itself, that's how you're going to referee the game.
Mm-hmm. And that's what James said to me after that game. He was like, that's refereeing. Welcome to officiating. Finding that sweet spot of what are we going to do in this game. Now, it helps if you've seen the teams before, but a lot of times guys will, and you ladies will go into a game having never seen these teams or don't know these coaches. It happens all the time. So we have to be able to handle not only ourselves, but both sides of that conflict. Now, just moving off the books and the conflict resolution, I got to embarrass Blair here. He sent this to me in his email. One of his best stories, and actually two of them, his best stories, were both kind of embarrassing. So I'm going to read this one here for you, Blair. In his first year of officiating college basketball, he was the U2 and scared to death. Do you remember what teams? Do you remember where you are and what teams? Was this your first
up in North? Yeah, up in North Idaho College, and I don't remember the visiting team.
Okay. He was scared to death, and the referee just sits there. And after a bit, everyone was staring at him, the R. He then waves me over and hands me the ball to toss and says, just make sure it's high enough. I thought, yeah, I can do this. I sent that ball 20 feet in the air, and one of the tall jumpers, after returning to the floor, catches it with one hand and hands it to me and says, do you want to try that again? I look at the referee, and he is crying. He was laughing so hard. So did that night get any better for you, Blair?
Oh, my word. I was mortified. And it did take me a little bit to get into the game, really, because every time I look at him, he'd look at me, and you could see his shoulders start chuckling. And then after a bit, I thought about it. It was during a timeout, and I thought, you know what? Just enjoy the situation. There's nothing you can do about it. It's funny. Okay?
Yeah.
Move on, because you're probably going to have a bunch more.
Now I get another situation. I will embarrass you just a little bit. And shout out to our friend Scott, who has also done this during an actual varsity game. But Blair says, at the tryout camp for the Mountain West, I was working a game, was trailing on a fast break, and my brain and my legs were just not communicating well, and I started falling forward while running. I tried to run faster, but that didn't help. I eventually was forced into the decision to fall, tuck and roll, which I did. I popped up and had to call an out-of-bounds call. I thought to myself, thank goodness Bobby Dibbler, the Mountain West assigner, is watching. I grabbed the ball to inbounds it and happened to glance in the corner and see Bobby standing there, laughing and giving me the travel signal. So,
I that's another.
Did you make the try? Did you make the team? Did you make the team?
I did not. I did not. But I'd met him a couple times after that too, and he still remembers that. But that, you know what, that's the fun stuff. I think sometimes we forget that to have fun with the game. Yes, we what we're doing is very, very important, and but we need to smile. There are things that happen in the game that are just funny, and enjoy them. And one of my greatest memories is my very, very first game ever was actually working with my dad. He was getting ready to leave. His signer called, said something about his partner got in a wreck, something like that. And he says, we got nobody else to go. Well, he grabs me. Well, it's a girls' varsity game. So my very first game was a girls' varsity game, and I was horrendous. My first call was a block call, and the girls were probably 3 feet from each other. And it was just... But you know what, though? I've thought about that and just laughed, and just the great people I've been able to work with, and the coaches, and what a great job to have.
Absolutely. And I think, you say it's fun, and you touched on this point. I'm going to jump back into the books real quick. And this is a book by John Taffer, the Don't Bullshit Yourself book. Learn how to see an excuse for what it is, a false promise, identify the real issue underlying the excuse making, and address it in a straightforward, unemotional way. Might not have been the quote I thought I was pulling up, but that premise of that book is, we need to look in the mirror. We need to be having fun out there. I think if if we're having fun and we're smiling and we realize it's just a game, other people might be able to feed off of that, whether it's coaches or players, because the old adage around here, at least, and I can attest to it, having been into so many gyms as just a television reporter who was watching and reporting, the crowd will feed off of that home head coach and the energy that he brings. And I think if we can handle that in a way and bring that, what you're talking about, that laughing, and stop making the excuses of, oh, I got to be super serious about this game, people can feed off of that.
Right. And completely agree. Just don't take it too far. People can
not a joke.
read it. Oh, yeah. See, and that's exactly it. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, he's not taking this serious, or he thinks this is a joke. And in the fans, the parents, they're emotionally invested in these kids, and the coaches are too. So you got to give them that due professionalism, yet portray that, hey, nice and relaxed, nothing too quick. I've got this all under control, and that's how we talk. Do we raise our voice, or do we keep it down, kind of like we're talking now? Do we look athletic? Do we lose a little bit of the weight that we've gained in the off season, and do we put that time and effort into it? And I find as the older I get, the worse it is trying to lose weight.
Yeah, I tried to hit the weights as soon as basketball season was. I actually gave myself a week or two, but then a week or two after basketball season was over, the weights in the weight room were just too heavy, and I got into it for a few weeks, and then baseball season started, and I just found myself, well, maybe tomorrow. And so you're absolutely right. I think a lot of conflict resolution is the way we portray ourselves as well, and allowing people to see us in a professional manner, but keeping it lighthearted. So we're not. Not only is it appearance that we talked about earlier with the verbal judo, people are concentrating on how we say things, but it's maybe put some deodorant on, guys. Don't run by a coach with Wednesday's gear and it's now Saturday and it's been sitting in your suitcase for those 72 hours. Put some cologne on, deodorant. I will say shave, even though this is about what I run with during the season. I had it trimmed up today. Go ahead and shave. Appearance is a lot of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are your pants? Do they have a nice crease in it? Is your shirt all wrinkled? Your jacket that you have on, all of those things. Are your shoes, shiny? And in basketball it's not a big deal, but football and baseball, our shoes get thrashed, and we got to pay attention to that. I carry, free shoes and polish them up every time. So people read that.
Blair
right
does
off the
have
bat.
the shiniest shoes in our association. I can attest to that because I was out in the middle of the Idaho desert at a small school reffing with Blair, and I looked down. How much shoe polish do you go through a year, Blair?
More than my wife wants me to.
So, well, I think that's going to do it, Blair. Do you have anything else you want to finish on? We've talked conflict resolution. We've talked our summer reading list. Those books here, I'll bring it up again for you if you missed the summer reading list. How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Don't Bullshit Yourself by John Taffer. The Art of War by Sun Tzu. We actually haven't talked about that one. I'll pull up the quote I have here in a second. Verbal Judo. The Gentle Art of Persuasion by George J. Thompson, and Boundaries, When to Say Yes, When to Say No. I haven't gotten to my quote by that one, I don't believe. So I'm going to pull that one up real quick. Boundaries. To rescue people from the natural consequences of their behavior is to render them powerless. I think that's a lot of what we've been talking about is coaches will behave in such a way. Let's try to offer them an avenue not to behave that way, and then gently remind them, oh, you have a boundary. Go back on the other side of that boundary.
I tell you what, that is such a fantastic quote when you're able to talk a coach off the cliff and allow them to stay in the game. They will love that. I've had coaches tell me later, I'm like, man, I'm sorry. You had every right to throw me out and you didn't. I appreciate that. And now we're getting into that mutual respect where they understand that here, I am here for the game. I'm going to do the best that I can do. And you do have I don't want to say the moral high ground, but you definitely have the high ground in the situation where when something does happen, now you can look at them and go, okay, wait a minute. Okay, now we're creeping on the cliff again. You're like, they'll go, okay, got it. I understand. That's a great place to be.
And that's as part of my story earlier when I should have walked the coach back from half court instead of just whacking him, walk the coach back. And as a part of me explaining is, Coach, you've also got one technical foul. Don't leave your box again or I will have to toss you. Stay there. It just talk the coach back. Let them know what their consequences are. And Sun Tzu, The Art of War, we'll get this in before we leave you for the night. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And I think that's what you're talking about. Talking a coach off the cliff, get them to subdue and to submit without having to fight. Explanations. Use when we're on the football field, we have our voice, we have our whistle, we have a flag. When we're on the basketball court, we have our voice, we have our whistle. Mm-hmm. Use those tools.
Yep, and don't try to embarrass them. That'll never go over well. Let them keep the respect that the fans and the administration have for those coaches intact.
Because they are superior to you in some way. They know something that you don't. They have experiences that you don't. Every person you meet out there has the knowledge or has a piece of knowledge or an experience that you don't. So they know more than you in some way or another, and you should respect that.
No doubt. And as officials, I think we need to share those stories more often because the new officials, they want to know this stuff. You know what? Share the hard times, share the things I should have done this stories, and share the funny stuff as well because we're losing them faster than we're gaining them.
Absolutely. And that's another topic I'm going to be trying to hit on here throughout the summer months is trying to recruit new guys and bring them in, ways that we can recruit and help them overcome some of those poor experiences new officials have. So we'll be touching on that. Blair, thank you for joining us here on the very first episode of Striped Life Officials, this video cast on YouTube, and catch the audio wherever you podcast. You can find us on Instagram at Striped Life Officials. And if you've had a good time and enjoyed our conversation, hit that like and subscribe button. Do us a huge favor and spread the word on officiating. Blair, thank you very much.
You betcha, man. Love you, brother.
Love you. And that's another thing about Blair. The first time I ever met Blair or refereed a game with him, I love you, man. And that's I think we need a hell of a lot more of that with the Blair Piippos of the world.
I appreciate it.
Later, Blair.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to Striped Life Officials. Go slow.